So every once in a while, I stumble across a story on the internet.com, and I know, I already truly believe that this is the correct story for you. And a perfect example of this is what we're going to talk about today, because Chicago has now come up with the absolute dumbest, most goofy way in order to deal with retail theft. And of course, it doesn't have anything to do with actually prosecuting retail thieves, having consequences for these people, because that would make way too much sense. Instead, they have deployed a new goofy security mechanism that I just find absolutely hilarious in every possible way. Now, we've talked about on this channel multiple different times how retail theft has exploded across this country. We spoke about how in Chicago in particular, it is causing very detrimental effects like the closing of their Walmart. And by the way, I've even shown you clips and videos and whatnot of the damage that was done to their Walmarts during the Black Lives Matter riots. And this is part of the way that crime drives people into poverty. We remove the consequences for shoplifting. Kimberly Fox does not prosecute these cases, so people are incentivized to do this. That increases the percentage of merchandise stolen, and companies like grocery stores, Walmart, big box stores that rely on selling a lot of volume at low profit margins all of a sudden are no longer profitable in the area. They leave, the people that work there lose their jobs, property values end up going down. If they're in a mall-like complex, then the foot traffic decreases, that negatively impacts the businesses, and the theft overall makes it more expensive for new businesses to operate because they have to pay higher insurance premiums, and there's higher risk for liability, and all sorts of things that, of course, stem from the fact that criminality is allowed to run rampant. A culture of lawlessness is being endorsed, and thus the residents of these major metropolitan areas and rural areas that would allow the same policies to go along unchallenged end up in a worse place financially, not to mention the fact that you pay higher prices even if the store doesn't close in order to compensate for the theft. However, Chicago has a solution, and it's essentially to quite literally cover up the criminals with fog. And yes, I'm dead serious. But before we get into that, thank you to everybody who signed up over on actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And thank you to my podcast listeners on Apple, Spotify, and Google's podcasting platform.
Can't see it, can't steal it. They are the first store using fog to deter crime. It's a story you'll see only on 2, a brand new way of fighting the mass retail thefts plaguing the city.
Now, I've been thinking a lot about my appearance on Culture War. I've been thinking a lot about the stupid, ridiculous, insane, asinine points brought up by Emma Vigeland in order to explain the crime spike in 2020 that, by the way, strongly correlates not just with the year change into 2020, but the death of George Floyd and the passing of all these soft-on-crime pieces of legislation. And I think to myself, how can this woman actually say that a lack of Medicare for all is the reason behind the crime spike?
You're saying poverty and desperation results in crime. I'm wondering why it is that you've had these homeless guys. They've been predominant. I think it's almost entirely these homeless guys shoving people in front of trains. Last year it was 25. And so that is.
So that's a mental health problem. I mean, we do have a mental health problem in this country. We have an issue with not having socialized health care, where people are unable to access health care, mental health care in particular, but also every other kind of health care. I mean, 28 million uninsured people in this country. That's a massive problem.
As if in 2019 and the decline in crime from 1995, 1994-ish, all the way to 2019 was caused by the passage of a Medicare for All program that was somehow repealed or something like that. It makes no sense. But you know what also doesn't make any sense? When you laid out these incentives that basically allow people to get away with shoplifting and they start committing theft and doing all of these crimes. And in fact, we've covered a story specifically where a guy started his crime spree in Cook County, which is the county that covers Chicago. He ended up in Wayne County. And when he was arrested in Wayne County and he found out he was going to be prosecuted in Wayne County, he actually tried a maneuver in order to get him back in Cook County so he could get off easier. So even the criminals know for sure that you want to be prosecuted in one of these woke areas that refuse to do anything about crime because they want the no consequences. They're acting poorly due to the fact that there is no response equivalent by the judicial system in order to handle them. But what I didn't think of, what I didn't realize, is that this level of idiocy spreads top down all the way throughout these cities, because now we have retail stores thinking, you know what? If we deploy fog on the criminals, then that will somehow prevent them from stealing everything. Because I don't know if you guys are aware of this, you can't take something if it's foggy in the room where you're trying to take the thing.
The newest solution to Chicago's retail theft problem comes in a box. It may not look like much, but it only takes seconds for this to make a difference. Hit by thieves and cleared out twice in a year, the owner of this Lincoln Park small business knows how bad this hurts.
My store was robbed almost 6 months ago, and I still don't have a settlement from my insurance company.
Now look, this is a very serious situation. As you heard from this woman who is running the store, these guys rushed in, they stole a bunch of merchandise, and then she is waiting now 6 months, still going, for settlement for her insurance company, which by the way just goes to show you that all these idiots that tell you, oh well, it's covered by insurance, no big deal, obviously have no experience with business at all whatsoever, because insurance doesn't cover everything, and they'll fight you and look for reasons why they don't have to pay. On top of that, insurance premiums go up as a result of this. When this kind of thing happens, you end up paying for it in higher premiums. On top of that, as we've covered on this channel multiple different times, small businesses, which these people on the left pretend to care about more than any other kind of business, even though they hate business overall, actually disproportionately don't have any insurance. And in fact, we talked about how in the Minneapolis riots, a bunch of insurance companies couldn't even get a settlement high enough to pay for the demolition of their building, which had to be condemned after the damage of the Black Lives Matter rioters. So you hear this woman, I hear her plight. I don't have anything negative to say about her. I'm not mocking her for trying this. When you're put in a desperate situation by a city that no longer serves the law-abiding citizen, this is where you're going to be. And remember, Brandon Johnson was elected. He is a worse mayor than Lori Lightfoot, and he's talking about how these criminals that are destroying this woman's livelihood, taking food away from their family, are actually the victims of trauma. These are the poor Aladdins that are just trying to steal to make ends meet. Ignore the fact that they're obviously an organized retail theft gang, and they're doing a hit, and they've hit this store multiple times, and that the law-abiding citizen suffers when you allow criminality to run wild.
A problem plaguing business across Chicago for years.
Look at Michigan Avenue, we're, down 30%. People are just moving out.
Now, of course, you see the store closures. They're referring to Michigan Avenue. We documented this phenomena in Portland. We've documented it in New York City. We've documented it in San Francisco. And again, this is just the decay of the urban centers fueled by the theft that we're talking about. And for those of you who are like, oh, well, there's other stresses in the economy. Sure, that's definitely true. But you know what doesn't make it better? When theft goes unchallenged. So you have all these businesses selling. Nobody's coming to replace them. All these office buildings end up being abandoned. They end up getting vandalized. And people start to notice that nobody cares about this area. People start to notice that there is no order. And what ends up happening, and this is the whole premise of broken windows policing, is that environment invites more criminality.
Problem meets solution.
Density USA's instant fog technology is pretty unique. When a criminal breaks in after hours, the alarm deploys, the fog deploys, and in seconds, your business is going to be protected.
Mike Eagle is with Density USA.
They literally can't see it to steal it.
Yeah, that is the premise of this story. That if you deploy fog, essentially criminals are the equivalent of video game NPCs, and when you're out of their sight range, they then can no longer affect you. That's the strategy that they're deploying here. They're going to drop fog on the criminals, who, by the way, you can see in the videos, rush into the store, grab all the expensive merch within seconds, and then peace out, in order to prevent them from stealing it. Because I don't know if you guys know this, if you lose the ability to see due to fog, your ability to steal is completely disabled. In fact, Jafar probably should have used this against Aladdin in the Aladdin movie, because that would have completely disabled him in every possible way. There is actually, quite literally, according to this guy, nothing you can do once the fog is deployed. Don't think about prosecuting criminals. We got some fog to shoot in their faces with this expensive fog machine, and that's gonna solve all the problems.
The company behind the fog. Did you ever think that you'd be talking about fog to stop crime?
No. Not even.
Even the guy who's selling it doesn't seem like he believes it. The woman asked him, did you ever think you would be talking about deploying fog to stop crime? And he's like, no, I mean, I sell fog machines to like independent filmmakers so they could add atmosphere to their movies. But I don't know if you guys know this. Nobody steals anything on set in those indie filmmaker shows where they end up, using the fog machine, because it's that much of a deterrent. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but if you can't see something, you basically can't impact it at all. I don't know if you guys are noticing this, but if your eyesight is obstructed in any possible way, you're essentially a law-abiding citizen. What we need to do is actually put these fog machines in prisons, deploy the fog on the prisoners, and they will come out as upstanding members of society, because I don't know if you're aware of this, fog solves every single problem.
Their non-toxic, no-grime fog tech is being used across the world, he says successfully, but just started rolling out here in the U.S.
So our line is warn, alert, repel. And the repel actually works.
We ran the numbers. Both theft and robbery are up this year in Chicago. Theft, the highest we've seen since 2019. Robbery, the highest since 2018. This tech aiming to prevent another hit like this here. The basic model runs around $7,000.
Look, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not going to say that this fog is completely useless. Obviously, it obscures you, so you might end up in a situation where somebody comes in looking for particular items or whatever, and it takes them longer to find those items, or maybe they don't find them at all. But if it takes them long enough, hopefully they end up in a situation where law enforcement shows up. But the problem that I have with this premise, the problem that I have with the fog machine deploying, is that even if it does work, even if it gets criminals to linger longer and then they get arrested, they're immediately going to be released, offered plea deals, cut breaks by Kimberly Fox, because I don't know if you're aware of this, the issue isn't the fact that these criminals don't have their vision obstructed enough. The issue is they can't see right from wrong. The issue is the district attorney won't actually do her damn job and prosecute these people. They won't prosecute repeat offenders because a bunch of people in the United States of America are under the belief that these people who terrorize these communities, make society significantly worse, are actually Aladdins, and they're only stealing because they've fallen on hard times. They're only stealing because they want bread to feed their family. They need that Gucci purse because they're going to grill it on a barbecue and serve it to their starving children. And what's wrong with you for daring to point out the fact that this is organized crime, that even if you're broke, that doesn't justify you stealing. In fact, if you have a stronger incentive to steal, we should probably put in place stronger disincentives to prevent you from stealing, and having the city reduced to poverty just because somebody thinks their bad state, their lot in life, which by the way, most likely they earned, is somehow give them a justification to harm others, is not a good way to have a functioning society. So while I do say, what could it hurt? It probably will help on the margins. I just want to point out that they are not addressing the core of the issue. They are not addressing the real problem, which of course is the fact that criminality is going unchallenged in the city of Chicago, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. Kimberly Fox was elected for a second term. Lori Lightfoot was ousted for being soft on crime, so then they elected an even more committed ideologue, Brandon Johnson, so that he could double down and make all those same policies significantly worse.
So it'll fill up about 1,000 square feet in roughly 15 seconds.
The first store in Chicago, in the state, to put the fog to the test. The owner didn't want herself or her store identified, but she did want to share this with other business owners, with you.
It just gives me peace of mind. I sleep better.
Yeah. This technology has been in place here for about a month. They haven't had to use it yet, but this business owner is hoping it makes all the difference.
The local news is incredibly goofy. Of course, she had to close it by deploying the fog machine. On top of that, I just want to point out that this thing cost $7,000. And of course, they probably wasted thousands of dollars worth of fog just in this segment to show you how cool it is, even though it's completely laughable in multiple different ways. Again, when these people are coming in and bum rushing and trying to steal all the merchandise from the store, deploying a little fog is not going to do anything for them. In fact, a bunch of these stores have alarms, security gates, and all of that. And guess what? It is not deterring retail theft. And it's up this year since Brandon Johnson has taken office, not down. So where it's actually getting worse in the city of Chicago, due in large part to the fact that they've doubled down on these soft on crime policies. And it doesn't have to be this way. Residents of Chicago could look at the fact that they hit well over 800 murders for the first time in 25 years and say to themselves, you know what? Doubling down on the policies that actually originally led us to the worst times in the city of Chicago is not where we need to go. We can stand up to criminals and acknowledge the reality that even if you're real upset about the death of George Floyd, allowing your cities to decay, to be destroyed, will not actually bring him back. I know some people are waiting on the second coming, but let me tell you, it ain't happening. Now look, as always, I open the floor for your feedback. I want to know what you guys think. I want you guys to tell me down in the comments below. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's absurd, but it's up to you now. The comments are your domain. If you like the video, show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe if you want more content. You can follow me on all my social media. Support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Chicago's asinine way of stopping theft. Till next time.